Hello, Junkie Nation. Welcome to Spinning Back Clique. Each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a quick spin through the biggest stories in MMA. And on today's episode, we'll discuss Rose Namajunas defeating Tracy Cortez. What's next for them? Paddy Pimblett, he revealed to MMA Junkie that his upcoming UFC 304 bout is the last fight on his current contract. Now, that man has some options. Jake Paul, he's back this weekend. He'll box Mike Perry on Saturday. Are you into it? We'll discuss that as well. Hello, everyone. Gorgeous George here on the con. And look at the distinguished panel we have for you today. SBC creator Goes from MMA Junkie Radio. He's right here in the fight capital of Las Vegas. The MMA media titan is back. Mike Bond, he joins us from Toronto. Cold Coffee is going to be on the ones and twos. But before we get started, if you would kindly hit that like button, I would greatly appreciate it. In fact, if you think I'm a dork, hit that like button. That'll be the true test, right, guys? And why stop there? Smash the subscribe button. You'll have access to our whole library of videos. All right, guys. So the former UFC strawweight champ and current flyweight Rose Namajunas, she defeated Tracy Cortez via unanimous decision. The event took place in her adopted hometown of Denver, Colorado. Mile High City, man. It's not easy to fight there. And I think we can officially say that we have another title contender looking to take down Alexa Grasso. Mike Bond, were you impressed with her performance? I know that was a horrible GSP voice, but it's so old school that no one might get the joke. But what were your thoughts, bro?
Yeah, it was a good win for Rose given the circumstances, right? Like short notice opponent, change from Macy Barber. Maybe not like a dramatically different style, but still, having that thrown at you on a couple weeks' notice for her. A little bit outside the norm for Rose. She doesn't usually fight under these circumstances, and we don't usually see her being this active. So it's actually really nice to see her getting some momentum. Third fight since September when she moved up to 125 pounds. And she did what she needed to do here, right? I think if she had got that finish in the first round after the knockdown, probably we would be speaking about her in much more glowing terms right now. But this was a clear win for her. Maybe you could say she slowed down a little bit towards the end. Cortez's round 4 and round 5 were her strongest. Actually, one judge gave her both those rounds, which I was a little surprised by, but she did solid work there. So overall, a decent fight. Nothing crazy. We're probably not going to be calling back to this one in 5 years or anything, but for Rose, a serviceable performance. She's now 2-1 since moving up to this division, and definitely on the right direction if she wants to get that title shot and get that chance to become the second female 2-division champion along with Amanda Nunes.
Yeah, Mike, I agree, man. There would have been a nice exclamation point on Rose's win if she follows up on that knockdown, gets the finish, whether it was on the ground or if she tells her to stand back up, puts the finish. But I think, obviously, it wouldn't have vaulted her into next. I don't know about what's happening with Valentina Shevchenko, but she's got that key loss to Manon Fiorot. But yeah, it just gets played as a nice win. And yeah, going to a decision. I mean, that's just kind of what it does, man. Do you think she should have let her just get back up rather than follow her to the ground?
Probably. I mean, in hindsight, 2020, right? You never know what should have happened in that moment. But I think for her, yeah, if she had got Cortez up there, maybe she was still a little rattled. We see a few comments in there saying, she punched the eyelash off, which was definitely a unique moment there too. Yeah, that would have made it all the better. But for her to go in there, that's what's like a veteran fighter, right? Maybe someone who had less experience than Rose would go in there, gas themselves out going for a finish, and then who knows how this fight looks as we go later on. Tracy Cortez, clearly durable. Clearly she had the gas tank despite taking this relatively short notice. I know she was supposed to fight next week, but yeah, I think for Rose, you can't really criticize too much because she's seen and done it all at elevation. That is not the place where you want to overexert yourself and run your cardio out looking for an early finish.
Yeah, her first 5-round fight, and you get knocked down early. Goes, aren't you saying get up? I mean, you got to feel that fighter's shaking, deer in the headlights. What's coming next? You know what I mean? Like, I just think that's the move rather than follow them to the ground, unless you're, this vicious ground and pound person. And Rose can hold her own on the ground. But what were your thoughts on the fight and that decision, which really maybe changes the narrative of what we're talking about here today?
I actually was okay with her doing that. We discussed this yesterday, and you actually got me thinking, George, so much so that I went back and rewatched the fight. And I think maybe it's a little bit of what Mike said, You're taking you get an opponent switch, you're at altitude. When I rewatched the fight, it really looked like somebody probably told her, "Look, let's just get in there, let's get the job done, and let's move on." Because there were maybe moments where she could have taken a few chances, put her foot on the gas. She didn't, but she got the win, and she looked pretty damn good, I thought. Could she have done a little bit more? Maybe. Yeah, I did wish she was a little bit more aggressive, but really, she looked dialed in from the beginning. I mean, it was all about experience. It was about her range, the distance. She used every tool in her belt to beat this girl. The only thing she didn't do was really put her foot on the gas. But at the end of the day, given the circumstances, I thought she had really good fight IQ. I think round one, I think she caught her pretty good, but I don't think she really hurt her. I think at that point she was just thinking like, I'm going to cement the round. I'm just going to be on top. Could she have let her up and would it have been a good look? Probably, but I don't think she would have got the finish. I think if you look at Tracy Cortez and the way she fought the rest of the fight, I think she was okay. Rose, I think it's pretty solid. I think one of the things that we always have to worry about her is not just physically, but mentally where is she at. And I thought from beginning to end, it was a pretty impressive Rose Namajunas.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, like I said, I think I'm just now of the opinion, stand back up, because if we started the fight and I put you down and you had, as clear of a head as there's going to be at the start of the fight. Imagine now that I've knocked you down and I'm the vet. You haven't been in this position before. Get up. I think the crowd gets going, but then again, who knows what these fighters are thinking? Once it starts, it's probably one blur. You know what I mean? It's just that again, she's just got so much experience with this. It kind of reminded me of the Joanna fight. I think she put her down once and then put her out, but obviously it wasn't that that close together. All right, now with this show accompanying us is the chat. So chime in, folks. Should she have let her back up, or did you agree with her following her in? You guys can chime in, and we'll look over and see what's going on in the chat. See if we can bring you into the show. How about some shout outs real quick to Lazy Bed? He's always in here. He was hoping Fida would be here, but she'll be on a future episode soon. David Vining, nice to see a new name in there. Chris Goes Wild, he's a veteran as well. Sky V's and El Daddy, met him at the UFC Fan Expo. Nice fella. Beavis and Butthead says, Michael Bond, Georgian goes, how has your day been? So far, so good, my friend. And Todd Johnson says, another phenomenal episode is on the way. You must be pretty mystic, my friend, because yes, we are going to deliver another episode. What's next for Rose, Mike? Mike, you do these pieces for us on Junkie, folks. You can always count on that, right? But since you did them, kind of guide us through it again. Give us the cliff notes. What should Rose do next?
Yeah, I think, of course, she wants the title shot, right? I just don't see that happening for her unless some things really, really break her way. I mean, we lay it out, right? We seem to think that Alexa Grasso and Valentina Shevchenko will have their trilogy next, probably at the Sphere in September, Noche UFC. But of course, there's this lingering conversation. Will Valentina take that fight? If she doesn't, you would expect they'd have to go to Manon Fiorot, right? She's on this nice winning streak in the division, 7-0, I believe. She beat Rose not long ago, 2 fights ago, beat Erin Blanchfield. So like she's undeniably having dibs on the next title shot. Whatever happens, whether she gets the call to fight instead of Valentina or she fights the winner of that trilogy fight between Grasso and Shevchenko, and that leaves Rose behind. I mean, you can't find a way to skip her in the queue unless people get injured, maybe Manon gets an injury or something like that. Then maybe that's the only path I could see her for the belt. In which case, I think you got to revisit the Macy Barber fight, right? But again, you don't really know what's Macy Barber's health status. Like some of the stuff she shared when she had to pull out of this fight was pretty concerning. Echoes a lot of the problems she was having when she was trying to fight at straw weight, just with her body metabolism and all these different things going on. So we hope she's okay, but who knows if she's able to continue fighting at 125 safely when she could get back in there. She might have to move up again. Who knows? So I don't even know if she's available. And then you go outside of there, there's not really a ton of options. You could go to Erin Blanchfield. You could do the trilogy with Jessica Andrade, but Jessica Andrade is rumored to be back down at strawweight or maybe staying in this division. Who knows? Natalia Silva is a fight that's being flown out there. So there's nothing that's super obvious. I think Rose is kind of going to have to sit on her hands and see what happens with Macy. And if she's unavailable, I think you look at Erin Blanchfield.
Mike, I want to call a quick audible here, but you're as deep as it gets when it comes to these rumors and things like that. Mm-hmm. What is going on with the Sphere, by the way? Since you brought it up, it was rumored to be Grasso and Shevchenko. More specifically, I guess, Will Shevchenko be fighting, or is there something? I mean, it looks like she's always training, so that's one thing. And then this whole thing going on with O'Malley and Marab. Does anything have legs that's floating out there, out in the internet, interwebs these days?
I think a lot of it has legs to a degree. Just UFC seems to be kind of slow playing getting this finalized. I mean, I've heard could get 3 title fights at the Sphere. I heard we could get 1 and it could just be the females. So like, I don't really know for sure what their plans are. I know a lot of people saw this video graphic thing come out from the UFC's French Canadian broadcast on Saturday saying that it was going to be Topuria and Holloway and O'Malley and Dvalishvili, but Aaron Bronstetter from TSN, who is kind of like a sister station to the French Canadian broadcaster up here, RDS in Canada. And he said that was just speculation from the announcers, not like an official fight announcement or anything. So I guess sit on your hands when it comes to that. But as far as like this fight in particular with Valentina and Alexa, I think it's probably going to happen. I mean, it was weird when I did that interview with Valentina like a month or so ago, right before Tough started. And she was like, oh, I heard like Noche UFC or UFC 306 isn't going to be Mexico themed, but that is clearly incorrect given like the artwork we've seen that's been put out there, given that it's officially been branded Noche UFC. So I don't know, like I get the sour taste in her mouth after what happened last time with the crowd influencing the judges, perhaps that famous 10-8 round and everything. So I can see her reluctance to do that again under these circumstances, but I would not risk it. I'd take the fight if I was Valentina, because who knows what's going to happen after the fact, right? So I think we get that fight, and then if I had to go with my gut again, don't aggregate me. This isn't reporting. We probably see one of the two, either O'Malley and Dvalishvili or Holloway and Topuria. I don't think we get both, though.
Wow. All right. Damn, I'm glad I asked that, because that definitely cleared a few things up. Goes, let's go back to what we were talking about. The other side of the coin here. Tracy Cortez dropped this fight. She came on strong, has been mentioned here, in rounds 4 and 5. She even said it herself, just like, man, I just took too long to get going. She's got a nice record. She had a win streak going. So she doesn't probably fall too far from the top of the hill. But what would you do with her next?
Not at all. I mean, the thing is, though, she was dominated. I don't feel like she needs to go out there and reinvent the wheel or anything like that, but she has to make some serious adjustments. I know her mentality, everything she said, she wants to get right back in there, and I think there are certain situations where that does make sense. Here, though, I really say you take some time off, you kind of go through that film, and you figure out what went wrong. Like, how much of this can I tweak right away, and how much of this is, like, big adjustments that I have to make, whether that's switching camps or immersing myself in a certain skill set. She's got to figure that out. And I think that takes a little bit of time. So I would probably take a little bit of time off and just kind of figure that out, because she's got all the skills to compete right now. But if she wants to take that next jump and really mess with the big dogs at the top, she's going to have to improve her game. She's going to have to make adjustments, some tweaks. Something's got to happen. But I think she's still got upside. I think she's young. I think we could still have something here with her. You just have to take this situation and really, really put some effort into it, because we've seen this a lot in our sport. We've seen it in boxing. Sometimes this pivotal fight where the fighter learns so much about themselves facing that next level of talent, if you don't respond to this correctly, sometimes it's in other sports, it's been a game changer. It's really spiraled other athletes. So I think a little bit of time off and just kind of go over that film and figure out what exactly you can improve right away. But definitely adjustments need to be made.
2 losses can definitely shake a fighter's confidence. Go ahead, Mike. What were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, I kind of look at it the opposite, right? I think it would behoove her to get right back in there. Like, what is Tracy Cortez's UFC career being? It's like 1 fight a year. I don't think she's fought more actively than that. So I think she needs to get going and try to carry some momentum off that, try to get on Noche UFC in September. Of course, if she took damage here, if like that headshot in the first round, concussion, anything like that, of course, take the time you need. Maybe don't try to fight again in less than 3 months. But if they can get her something on Noche UFC, I think she should take that and try to keep momentum going. I understand everything goes said there as far as like the risk. And if you do lose, then it looks like a bad decision. But she's had so much time off in between these fights. Let's maybe try something different here and be active.
Okay, so let me ask you guys this, because this is what I was thinking. Another recent loser of a big profile fight at 125 pounds was Aaron Blanchfield. I think I agree with Goes that I don't think Tracy's ready for Aaron, but I agree with Mike. Activity, man, it gets you back in the game, and she didn't took damage. Would you guys, if you were advising her, put her against Aaron Blanchfield? Which, by the way, if you beat her, you put Blanchfield now in that position where she's lost 2 in a row. She falls by the wayside, and now you regain everything you lost from the Namajunas fight. Mike, you're shaking your head. You wouldn't put her against Blanchfield?
I mean, I would be chomping at the bit to fight Aaron Blanchfield if I was anyone, especially coming off a loss. I mean, that's kind of what you described there. You lose to those 2 in a row, then people are like, okay, well, she can't beat any of these top 5 girls, and then she's way down there. What I think would be right for her is if Miranda Maverick wins or loses on Saturday, I think you go back to the table on that, because I kind of feel bad for Miranda, right? She got screwed in this situation. Tracy had like all the clout and stuff. She has the following, given all these reasons. And that was a huge moment for Miranda Maverick to try to take that from her. And now it's been partially taken away by Rose. And, she's fighting essentially a nobody in Dione Barboza now on Saturday. And if she wins that, I think she deserves, that chance to take some of that clout from Tracy. I think that would only be fair to her.
Add that to the list. Jabroni, tomato can, Tijuana taxi driver, a nobody, a jobber. There's like five of them. I like that. Just a nobody.
All due respect, of course.
Yes, we know. Yeah, she could be somebody this weekend and shut us all up. But Ghost, do you like the Blanchfield Cortez matchup, or would you say no? Maybe get someone coming up or whatever.
Yeah, no, somebody on a different level. I think Blanchfield. The problem is if you look at the fight, guys, this weekend, and you ask what did Tracy Cortez do that was good, there's not much you can point to. She just was tough. She hung with her, but she didn't really do too many things where you went, wow, okay, she's got something for that next level. Aaron Blanchfield is basically the same. Like, maybe one step below, I think, right now, the way Rose Namajunas fought. But that's still a tough out. Like, she's got to solve some things. So I definitely wouldn't lead her in that direction. But I do like the Miranda Maverick fight. I think that would be fun. I think that is something that would be very entertaining and kind of where she's at right now. That's something she needs.
The eyelash is getting talked about in the chat. I wouldn't put it on the level of Taylor Tooley getting his tooth kicked in UFC 1 by what was his name? The Savate guy?
Gerard Gordeau,
yeah. But yeah, that was kind of a trip to see the eyelash fly so quickly. We got a guy named Protos Hydralisk saying, I'm going to Florida this weekend. Forgot the Perry fight is on Saturday. Guess I'll be watching from the. Just go to it, bro. Go to it. It's at the Hard Rock, if I'm not mistaken.
You can get 2-for-1 tickets, I believe. So
yeah.
Bring a friend.
Exactly. But a shout out there. And Steve Williams, he said it. Yeah, the eyelash was one of the moments that makes MMA so unique. Everyone's laughing. I'm giving them props. Good comment there. All right, just to kind of put a bow on UFC fight card in Denver. Any highlights? Anything you want to highlight here before we move on to the next topic? There was some decent KOs. Goes, how about you? What do you want to put some shine on?
You know what, man? So just watching that fight, I really feel like Drew Dober helped save that card. I mean, let's be honest, it wasn't one of the greatest ones, but when you look at a guy like that, all right, this is somebody that the UFC definitely wants on their roster, right? It's always in shape. He'll take a fight anytime, any place, anywhere. He always comes forward. He's never afraid to take fights. The only thing is, it got me thinking, like, just sitting there, is the juice worth the squeeze? I mean, what he went through in that fight. I know they handed him $50K, but holy crap, man. I think if you hit me with a baseball bat in the same place, it might not even look as bad as what he took. And he's been taking some damage in fights. A lot of bravado. I commend him. He's definitely a guy that you want on your roster. But, man, this sport can get ugly, dude. And congratulations on putting on a great fight, but I really hope he heals up and he makes some adjustments in his game, because I don't know how many of these he can have.
You know, last week I was saying I thought it was great for the UFC to kind of throw this up there because they would be unopposed. No NHL, no NBA. The soccer tournaments go early, but this is a slobber knocker, right? And this slobber knocker could possibly steal the show. And so putting Jean Silva versus Drew Dober, Jean Silva was coming off that other fight not too long ago. I thought it was really, really wise of the UFC to put it together. 2 grown men signed the contract. Yes, looking in hindsight, one of them obviously regrets the move, but I think it paid off. But anyway, the guy I want to highlight was Montel Jackson. Just as he's getting ready to throw, Dominic Cruz says he throws fast and he's right to the point, and he sure as hell did, man. Boom, 1-2. Now, I don't know what Blackshear was doing. It looked like he was doing 5 things, either getting ready to parry, block, throw a knee, but in the end, he just made a face, probably the same one I would make if I was in a street fight, and boom, he got lit up. But Jackson's 8-2. This guy's a Dana White alum from 2018. That's 6 years now, right? I think he's paid his dues. I think he's ready for a ranked opponent. He's won 5 in a row. Again, 8-2 is just his UFC record, so he's getting the job done. He just doesn't have that one name. No disrespect to all the other ones; those are decent names that tell us you're a player, right? But now I think he really deserves a name that's 2. I think it's back-to-back 2 KOs as well. So let's give this guy a name, man. But I salute him, man. That was really, really nice work. 50 G's, 16 seconds of work, and now you can get right back to it. How about you, Mike Bond? Who do you want to highlight?
Yeah, well, definitely give a shout out there to Montel Jackson as well. Just a couple stats on him, I guess, coming out of that fight. He now has the most knockdowns landed in UFC bantamweight history with 11, which is pretty impressive. He's got a knockdown in 7 straight UFC fights, which is tied for the all-time record for consecutive fights with, these are some names, Chuck Liddell, Rampage Jackson, Cody Garbrandt, and Josh Emmett. So that puts him up there with some elite hitters. And yeah, he's obviously the lightest of the bunch in terms of weight classes there. And that 18-second knockout was the second fastest finish in UFC bantamweight history, 1 second behind Eric Perez's 17-second finish at UFC 150. So definitely put up some stats there. Montel Jackson, I agree, definitely deserving of top 15 guy. And you don't really, bantamweight is probably the hardest division to crack the rankings in, right? I'm sure we can probably all agree with that. So he's getting real close, and he deserves a shot to be in there for sure. But the guy that needs to be recognized, I think, from this card, as we're talking about statistics, is Jean Silva, right? Like him making the quick turnaround, getting 2 UFC wins in 2 weeks. He's only, I believe, the 5th person to do that. Many have attempted. People have tried on 7 days notice, 10 days notice. Khamzat Chimaev holds the records at 10 days notice, but they've either lost one fight or the other. For him to go in there and get both is huge. And to do it the way he did, I mean, he tore through Charles Jourdain at UFC 303, missed weight, that had to be noted, and then moved up and looked extremely comfortable at 155 and beating up a guy like Drew Dober. I mean, dude, the way he was tossing him in some of those clinch exchanges and stuff, you're like, holy crap, like, is he the bigger fighter here? I think maybe a little short and a little short of reach for 155, but he's definitely got the strength there and just, battered Dober in there. So he deserves big shout outs for doing that. I'm curious to see how he goes, and certainly one of the most unique personalities in the UFC right now.
That spinning elbow too, man, that is a weapon, because he does seem to throw it, whether it's set up or just on the fly, and it does some damage. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that guy. All right, just to clean up. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say before we move on, what do you seeing a bunch of people talking about in the chat? What did you guys think of Abdul Razak Al Hassan versus Cody Brundage?
Oh, that's the no contest fight. Yeah. Man, okay. Al Hassan, I know he's been through a lot. He talked about those allegations, talked about it for the first time. I saw a dude with a lot of rage, and I didn't know if he bottled it and was letting it go. But yeah, I mean, I really wanted to see this fight, play out. Felt bad for Brundage was Nichols' former opponent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's hometown. So like 2 guys really could have had a moment here, and they didn't. But was that your question, Mike? Sorry. I'm like Dana White. I lost the thought of the
no, it's just kind of what you thought. I mean, obviously Cody Brundage, he had a similar incident to this before, got a DQ win, and I know a lot of people think he's like milking it and stuff, but those were clean shots to the back of the head. There was at least a couple, and I mean, I think Abdul Razak Al Hassan is lucky he didn't get disqualified here too. You can say what you want about Cody Brundage. It's been a weird UFC run for him. There's no question about it, but I'm not going to sit here and question his fighting heart and stuff like that. Like he gave Bo Nickel a fight as good as anyone we've seen so far. So if you think that this guy's in there looking to quit, I mean, he could have quit 20 times against Bo Nickel and he didn't.
For sure. All right, and just to clean up this topic before we go to the next one, Brian John says the fans have decided rebook Rose and Macy. Todd Johnson says Rose looked good, not great, but she showed how average Cortez is, I think is what he meant to say. It's a fight, not only fans edition. Man, that's harsh. Cortez came on strong at the end. She's got a decent resume going in. Rose is just she's a former champ, bro. So no, I don't think I don't think she was average at all. Joseph Boza says on a full camp, Tracy may have had a chance. Scott Christian says Rose looked good. I was surprised she didn't get the finish on the ground though. Rose was way more versed in the ground game, and I was surprised she couldn't capitalize on it. Beavis and Butthead says Tracy did well even in her loss. Stock has gone up. I agree with that, considering the circumstances coming into the fight. Late notice, 5 rounds, not easy, first time at altitude. I truly believe she can compete against the best. Well, I think there's still a level to go. Steve Williams says, Mike, great interview with Paddy, and we're going to get to that. So let's pivot to it. So obviously, Paddy Pimblett, very, very popular. The UFC wants to hold on to these assets, right? Especially, it's hard to break through and become a star, a needle mover, something Nate Diaz never became, of course. But listen, you all had to be shocked when you heard that the final fight on his contract is UFC 304 coming up here in about 10 days or maybe more, 12 days. Mike, it was you that uncovered this, so we'll let you bat cleanup. Goes, let's get your thoughts on it, man. What, were you shocked when you heard this? The UFC doesn't let them get to the end unless they want them to, and I don't see Paddy Pimblett as someone they want to. You know, young, UK, they got obviously a growing legion of fans in the UK and Europe. What's going on here?
You know what, man? I think obviously it was very surprising, but you have to remember at the end of the day, the UFC is a business, right? And we have to figure out what exactly it is they're thinking on their side. Yeah, that's a kid that's got a lot of star qualities. You want to keep a guy like that, but at the same time, you have no idea what he could possibly be asking for, right? We've seen some of these big contracts that he's the Barstool thing kind of stood out a little bit. Like, who knows? Once people get a little taste of that, you have no idea what they could be asking for, and the UFC just can't let fighters do that type of thing, because then what happens is the next fighter wants to do it. It's a snowball effect, right? So you have to put your foot down eventually. Both sides have to make sense, but on paper, you kind of sit back and you go, wow, like this is a big name. You definitely don't want to let him go. But then you put yourself in the UFC shoes and you see who they matched him up against, Bobby Green, and you start to do the math a little bit and you go, okay, wait a minute. This seems like they attempted to do something. They just couldn't come to the agreement that they wanted. It's a real interesting situation, and the Bobby Green fight is going to tell us a lot of what options this kid's going to have going forward.
Yeah, man, that's okay. So old school matchmakers used to tell me, if we want you to lose, we can figure out a matchup. I don't know if they were supposed to say that, but that's weird to me, man. You know, when I saw Mike's interview, which, by the way, again, that's why I tell you guys, smash that subscribe button so that you'll have access to all these interviews, you know, where you find out that John Anik wants to be a matchmaker, or that Paddy Pimblett is on his last fight on the contract. Smash that subscribe button. The like button is to help the show grow, gets us in the algorithm, gets us on that front page. So if you'll do that right now, that'd be great. I was shocked by it. Of course, he did toss out, and I'll let Mike, we got on base, I'll let Mike back clean up and hit it home. But he did toss out, you know, hey, there's some YouTube influencer money out there. If they want to holler, you know, he was kind of leaving these little nuggets, right? Hints and stuff. But Mike, you were there. You heard it from him, man. What is going on here? Why would the UFC let it get to the stage? Did he just present an extra 0 or 2, or they were like, no, we're not going there?
I'm not sure on that front. I mean, that's the big question, right? I did try to press him a little bit. It was at the end of the interview, and he kind of just dropped it out there when I asked what was potentially going to be next for him after this fight against Bobby Green. And he just casually said, this is the last fight on my contract. So I had to press him a little bit, and he gave a little bit of mixed answers. Like, I directly asked, did you get presented with an offer and you turned it down because you intentionally wanted to fight this out? Like, what happened? He's basically said my manager, Graham Boylan, who we know from Cage Warriors as well, makes these decisions and he's working on it. And I don't think so, though, as far as like him saying they didn't turn down an offer. But then he also said, like, we'll go back to the renegotiation table after this fight. So I'm sure there's been talks. I don't know exactly what happened. This is something we could probably ask, you know, Dana White or whatever when we get the next opportunity to speak to him, potentially before this fight, maybe not till after. We'll see how that shakes out. But yeah, I am a little surprised that they ended up going to this point. Maybe Paddy's demands were too big and he wanted to show this fight in particular could be the deciding point of why he deserves whatever he might be asking for. But Also, like you mentioned, he did drop. There's some YouTubers boxing out there who could maybe offer me millions, and I wouldn't count that out. I mean, especially over in the UK, it's where like KSI's Misfits promotion is doing most of their events. And I think Paddy, in a lot of ways, could be a good fit for that type of stuff. I know there's a lot of detractors for Paddy Pimblett. They don't think he's that good, and his ceiling in the UFC lightweight division is probably like this fight with Bobby Green, maybe a little bit higher if he can win it. So maybe make all the money you can and go seek that out there. Maybe there is greener pastures for Paddy, but we have to note in this entire conversation, I did say, like, you expect your future to be in the UFC. And he said, yeah, absolutely. This is where I want to be, wants to fight the best fighters in the world. I do think that he wants to prove himself. So I would be surprised if he parted ways. Maybe he leaves and does like one boxing fight against a YouTuber, or somehow gets this Logan Paul beef to come to a head, which has been a thing in the past. And then he returns to the UFC. I don't see him fighting mixed martial arts anywhere else. That's something I could say pretty confidently. I'm sure PFL, who does a lot of events in Europe, would be chomping at the bit to get someone like him and probably offer a huge bag, but I just can't really see it in that regard. So I think Paddy does stay put, but certainly an interesting revelation, adds more layers to this fight. If he loses badly, that hurts him a lot in terms of his stock. And if he wins spectacularly, that is going to raise him through the roof. So the stakes on this fight absolutely just went up. And, there's other layers to this Bobby Green versus Paddy fight if we want to get to that as well.
For sure. And guys, I always laud our production team. They will win an Emmy one day, but it's going to be no thanks to me, because I should have thrown to a clip. Our producer's always ready for it. That's my bad, but we do have a clip from the interview. You'll hear it. Paddy Pimblett and Mike Bond discussing this. Let's go to this right now.
What does that do for you? What does that set up you for the second half of the year?
Obviously, if I fight again this year, then I'm going to want to fight someone else. I want to get in the rankings, and I want to fight someone higher up in the rankings. And, me and Moicano have had a little back and forth, so I'd love to fight Moicano. I think it'd be absolutely hilarious if I'd done a season of The Ultimate Fighter with him. I think that'd be one of the best seasons they've ever done. But we'll see what happens, know what I mean? This is the last fight on my contract, so we'll be getting back to the renegotiation table after this, so let's see what happens.
Interesting. Okay, well, I have to ask you a couple of things on that. Did they make an offer like leading up to this, and you decided to fight it out?
Oh, no, I haven't got a clue, know what I mean? It's my manager sorts all. I'll leave all that to him. I don't think so.
But you expect your future to be in the UFC?
Oh yeah, of course. Know what I mean? It goes without saying. I wouldn't want to go to a different organisation, lad. The UFC is the cream of the crop. It's the main, like, when you say to people I do MMA, most of them go, "What's that?" Know what I mean? Say, "Oh, UFC." People don't even know what MMA is, lads. But they know what UFC is. You never know, though. Some of these stupid YouTubers who are boxing could end up offering me millions to fight one of them. So we'll see what happens.
Oh yeah, you've had your moment with Logan Paul, so who knows? Maybe this is the time.
Yeah, good stuff. And you could see the reaction from Mike, like, whoa, like last fight on the contract. Definitely, I could see the wheels churning for the follow-up questions. Is it more on that Logan Paul, Jake Paul side, Mike Bond, or how about the Diaz Masvidal side? Has that been, you think that becomes an option as well? They're more like his weight class. Those other dudes, the Paul brothers, are big kids.
Yeah, I was going to say on one side, like, all those guys feel too big for Paddy, but we know Paddy can get big himself. So maybe it's not too unreasonable. He might just be showing up with a little bit of a beer belly to those fights. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I really see him in that world. It's kind of weird. Like, maybe there's some guy out there that they can do, like I alluded to earlier, on like a Misfits card or something. I don't know what Paddy's approach is. It feels like a little unserious for him, just given where he's at in his career. Like, this is your time to make a run. So maybe it's all just a leverage play, but again, there is some crazy money out here for this stuff. So I can't rule anything out at this point.
I forgot about Pimblett's ability to also put on some weight if he wants to.
He looked good there too. For
like
being 2 weeks out from the fight. I think this is going to be. He's taking this one serious.
Last few years, he's tightened it up. He still does a little bit of the weight gains, but not like a few years ago. I remember one time I saw him in a Padres outfit, and if you would have saw him from behind, you thought it was Tony Gwynn reincarnated or something. But what's that goes?
No, I know he was pretty massive at that point, but he's definitely dialed it down.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, look, if he wins and makes a splash, holy cow! I mean, I think the UFC will be forced to make some sort of a move. But you think he gets past Green? We don't have too much time. Goes who wins?
This is a tough out, man. Bobby Green is just so difficult to prepare for. You never really get it until you're actually in the cage with him. I think it's going to be a tough fight for Paddy. I actually have Bobby Green winning this one, unless Paddy Pimblett makes a significant jump. I think he's just going to get confused, man, by Bobby's game. I think he's going to beat him a little bit to the punch. But it's got a lot of stakes on it, man. And I'm not so sure. I get a little confused because I think, all right, well, Paddy Pimblett, if he were to leave and do some of this boxing, like, I don't know that there's that much life in it, really. Like, it's just different from Masvidal and Diaz, right? Like, not very many people are going to pack the Honda Center. It's not that easy just to kind of go out there and do something like that. So I don't know how much leverage he holds with that. But it's definitely going to be way harder to do off a loss of Bobby Green. He's probably got to beat Bobby Green, maybe even have to finish him to really garner that type of respect and people wanting to see him do something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mike, who wins?
I'm going to pick Paddy. I just think he's going to be focused for this one. He's going to have the home crowd there. It's going to be a hell of an environment on his side. And yeah, I just have questions about Bobby Green, man. And Paddy said it in our interview. Like, he still strongly believes he's reeling from that Jalen Turner loss, which feels like it happened a long time ago now, but it was just in December, man. And he, fought Jim Miller in a war there. So I don't know. You wonder, he's closing in on 40. Is the chin just going to not be what it was? And Paddy can hit hard, and he's going to be really ready for this one. So I'm going to pick him with like a degree of, skepticism. Bobby can win the fight for sure.
Mm-hmm. Man, well, they could sure use a big 3-0. With Aspinall, Edwards, and Pimblett, because
wait, George
didn't go too well this past weekend. England got knocked out there by Spain, but maybe these guys can pick up the slack a little bit. What do you think?
You're just okay with me picking one side and Mike the other, and we're just all.
No, you know what? Okay, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with the stats. You're right. I'm riding the fence here, and I'm picking on England. I really actually love England. I was cheering for them, because a lot of the players I watch them in the Premier League. So, all right, I think this age difference is huge, right? And the statistics just show it's 9 years seems to be this mark where 70% of the time the younger fighter will win. And again, why did they put these two together? Was it to show Pimblett the door on the way out? You're asking for too much money. We'll never pay that. You're not as big as you think you are. We got enough stars at 155. We're giving you the tough out in Green. Or like Mike said, man, because this isn't Bobby Green at 35. Remember, he went on a little nice run at 30, a few years ago. But yeah, dude, he stands there, and I don't think Pimblett has the offense on his hands, on his feet, to expose Bobby Green's hands. He talks to you or whatever, and he's not easy to take down, which is where Pimblett, I think, obviously could pose some troubles. But I did see a more serious Pimblett in the last fight camp and fight. Who knows if he's turned it around and like he knows the stakes here. He has to win. I'm just gonna go with the age, and I hate going against a SoCaler like Bobby Green, but man, I have to call balls and strike. I do think Pimblett will come out on top. Wouldn't be shocked if Green did, but I think Pimblett is going to win. I think he's going to, I guess, put him on the ground and get it done. But it's not going to be easy. It'd be better if it was 5 rounds. I think, just to see the fight materialize, more openings, for someone to get knocked down or someone to lose a scramble or whatever. But man, this is a tough one. I'm really, really looking forward to it, though. All right, we move on. Let's talk about Jake Paul and Mike Perry. Love him or hate him, Jake Paul seems to matter in combat sports. He has a massive following, and to be fair, he's been successful so far. No, he's not the next Muhammad Ali, who Cesar Chavez, Floyd Mayweather. I'm not saying all that, but in this era of celeb, influencer, minor league boxing, whatever you want to call it, he's kind of the man. So, what do you think, guys? Are you surprised at Jake Paul even willing to fight Mike Perry when he's got Mike Tyson ahead of him? Is he biting off more than he can chew? Mike?
I guess that's the big question we're going to find out, right? I mean, we've been waiting for this type of fight for a while. I mean, the size difference is just so reluctant. Like, if Mike Perry was a natural middleweight or something, then this would be much more intriguing. But he's never fought above 185, and this fight's going to be at 200 pounds. So that's just like a huge, massive advantage for Jake Paul, who was getting ready to fight probably at around like weighing maybe 230 pounds or something for Mike Tyson, whatever he was going to be in that fight. So he's a big boy. He's going to be probably cutting down to 200 here. So that just kind of takes something away from this fight for me, but is certainly an interesting challenge, far more than any of these other recent fights against MMA fighters. Mike Perry is not over the hill. He is not overly damaged, all these things. He is right in the thick of his prime. His confidence could not be any higher. His momentum could not be any stronger. So I think this is going to be a good fight. If I kind of had to like break it down how we might see it end on either way, I think if Mike Perry wins, it's probably going to be have to be by a knockout. I can't really see him winning a decision here. If Jake Paul wins, I think it is more likely a decision than a knockout, just because Mike Perry is ungodly levels of tough. So that's kind of the way I see it going. I think it'll be competitive. I think it'll be relatively captivating. But in the end, I think Jake Paul's just strict boxing prowess is going to be a little stronger here. And the fact that he's going to be the taller, longer, bigger, stronger fighter is probably what's going to tip the decision in his favor.
All right, now goes. Mike Perry has solved a 6'3" riddle in Luke Rockhold. He solved a moving guy with a long reach in Michael Venom Page, right?
Yeah.
But that was in bare knuckle, and this was in boxing. He does train boxing, I'm sure, for his MMA career and whatever, but this is a whole different sport. What do you think takes place here with Mike Perry and Jake Paul?
Well, I think if you look at the whole situation, this is kind of tailor-made, right? This is what Jake Paul does. He picks on these UFC fighters and he tries to get as good as an advantage as he can, right? Sometimes it's age. I think with Mike Perry, you look at it and you go, all right, well, he's a smaller guy. Yes, he's crazy aggressive, but so long as I can move around in this ring, I should be fine. I mean, I think that's the way you got to look at it, right? Like Mike Perry's going to help build the fight. I think he's tailor-made for Jake Paul. Jake Paul just has to box. He really has to box because Mike Perry's going to show up. He's not going to box. He's going to fight. He's going to come forward. But you'd be surprised, how much the landscape changes with these big gloves, how much defensively you can fight off. I think what it really comes down to is Mike Perry can maybe knock out Jake Paul. I don't think Jake Paul can knock out Mike Perry, but Jake Paul can outbox Mike Perry. And we're in boxing. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think it's going to be stick and move. He's going to get out of the way. Maybe the boo birds might come out. I think Mike Perry's going to be aggressive. He's going to come forward. He's going to take a lot of shots. And he'll probably have his moment, that'll make the fight interesting. But I think if Jake Paul sticks to his boxing, he should be fine here.
Do you almost see a Nate Diaz, Jorge Masvidal type of approach where one guy is a little bit more better at the sweet science, in this case Masvidal, but Diaz just won rounds by sticking and moving? And
Diaz with volume, and that's what Mike Perry could do, right? Volume, just keep coming. That's a lesson that maybe Jake Paul would probably have to learn, seeing what happened to Jorge Masvidal. He could definitely do something like that. But there's one thing about Jake Paul, man, he's no idiot. I think he learns from a lot of these things, and it's going to be fun. It's definitely got my interest. I'm going to be tuning in.
Yeah. Well, you're right. He seems to know how to pick opponents at the right time. I don't know if he gets intel and he found out Perry was just not training or what. But yeah, Mike Perry's a savage. I'm looking forward to it. The fights will be on DAZN. They're going up against Verna Jandiroba and Amanda Lemos. Just real quick, guys. We had a segment planned, but I don't have much of a level of interest in the segment, but do you guys have much of a level of interest in that main event? To be fair, these chicks are gangster, goes.
Not really, man. If we're keeping it real, I don't have very much interest in it. I get it. They're two very good fighters. It should be a decent fight. But look, I mean, so much time goes into combat sports, and you really, really have to get a hold of somebody and make it worth their while. We've heard from Dana White plenty of times, right? The cards that we don't think are going to be great, they're the ones that end up being great. Yeah, that's true. But I mean, you also have to get somebody's attention, man. And there's just so much of this. This card just doesn't really pop.
I'm tuning in for tomorrow, Tavares, and I do like Amanda Lemos's hands. Mike Bond, what's your level of interest? You into this? You're muted.
Sorry about that. I'm so excited for it. I'm actually flying to Brazil tomorrow so I can watch these two Brazilians fight each other from their home country and just get the true feeling of the fans, be there as the world and the country stops for this main event fight. No, I'm kidding. I am going to Brazil, but it's for vacation for a friend's wedding. So I won't probably be watching this one live, probably catch the replay if it's good enough. But yeah, I mean, this is the world we live in now. There's an Apex card, I think August 10th, that we still don't have a main event for. We'll probably end up getting like Sergey Spivak versus Marcin Tybura 2 bumped up to the headliner. So these are these situations now where you don't really know where, you know, like what these main events are going to be for these Apex cards. And here we end up with a card like this. Something notable, I guess you mentioned Brad Tavares. He will fight his 25th UFC middleweight fight in this one, which will pass Michael Bisping for the all-time record for middleweight fights at 24, currently tied right now. So Michael Bisping hasn't fought in, 8 years or so. So like finally someone is catching up and breaking that record. So credit to Tavares for, you know, the long-standing run, all that stuff. And it should be a decent banger with Jun Young Park, who is an entertaining fighter in his own right.
I gotta say, Mike, you are a pal. That's a 10-hour flight. What city are you going to?
We'll be in Rio and then like a city outside of it. My girlfriend is in the wedding party, so it's her very good friend. So I was kind of brought along for this one, but haven't been to Brazil in I think 7 years or so. I think the last time I was down there was for Dan Henderson versus Vitor Belfort 2. So it's been a moment.
There's some beautiful beaches in Brazil. I'm sure your arm wasn't twisted there, man. Have a good time out there. Yeah, and like I say, we're clowning here. Our level of interest just isn't there. So, you know, we love covering the UFC. It's our job, but man, there are just some cards that don't match up to the rest. The main event, both ladies have put in some work. I wish them the best. I hope they share $100,000 and get fight of the night. I will be tuning in for Tavares. I like Miranda Maverick, man. I'm a fan of hers as well.
One thing, George, just to circle back to Perry versus Paul, since we're talking about it on Saturday,
Sure.
What do you guys think? If Jake Paul loses, do we lose the Mike Tyson fight, or do you think if he loses, they still try to make that happen for November?
I think they still make it happen because I think it's still money. Just like Adam Sandler movies. They may not be that great, but they make money, and that's why they keep putting them out. Or I don't know if he's still doing it. But yeah, unless he really, really just gets annihilated, then maybe, because I don't know what Tyson's health is like, and I think he'd be 58 by the time he fights or whatever. But I'm not even sure if I gave my prediction, but I think Jake Paul's gonna win. So I think that it's safe. It's safe. We'll see. All right, chat room. Your level of interest, 1 to 10. I'm just curious. Amanda Lemos versus Verna Jandarova at the Apex. Are you tuning in for another reason on the card? What's it like? I'll see if I can circle back to it. How about a quick news roundup? Just because some big names were out there doing stuff. Mike Chandler and Conor McGregor. Well, Chandler, I should say, I guess, got a little bit of life breathed into him because McGregor tweeted that, hey, I spoke to Dana White. You and I are still going to do this, and in 2024. Do you believe him, Mike?
I believe that's what he believes. If that makes sense. So we'll say that much. I think they want this fight to happen in December, the final pay-per-view. They're not going to create a new fight card date for it, as had maybe been speculated after the 303 fight was canceled right away. So if I had to put my money on it, they're going to try to book this for December. Whether it actually happens and we get another pullout and stuff is a whole different question. But I do think at some point we get McGregor Chandler announced for December, and then we're on the road to that. But that is freaking half a year away, man. And as we know with Conor McGregor, anything can happen in half a year. Multiple things can happen in half a year. So fingers crossed.
Goes, do you think it happens? What'd you think of that tweet? I mean, it just seems like the same old stuff over and over again.
There's just so much drama, man, with this fight. And we got so close to it that now having that taken away from you, I'm kind of with Mike. Like, I don't know. I just feel like, let me know when we're like a week away and maybe I'll get fired up. But I just don't want to get let down again. I think we talked about this yesterday a little bit, George. And honestly, I don't know. I just feel like this fight's not gonna happen, man. It just
It's
feels
sad.
snake
It's
bitten.
sad to see that tweet, and it's sad to see just someone get iced like Chandler has. He could have done so much since then, even if he took 1 year off after the Poirier loss, which was 1-1 going into round 3, and then Poirier got the finish. But man, I don't know. And then McGregor, obviously, his fall from superstardom as well. How about John Jones tweeted something about, I'm at LAX, I might lose a finger. Of course, he takes it down. But because this guy's acts like such a clown at times, it's like, who even has the time to invest in that when I'm watching a European final or a Copa America final or baseball or whatever? But then we discover there might be other stuff going. Mike, bring us up to date. What do we know about Jones in that regard, or anything else? Because that's another guy that we're frustrated with. And you talked about the December fight card. Well, there's one in November in New York that's supposed to highlight John Jones and Stipe Miocic, right? But bring us up to date.
Yeah, that is the plan as of now. From my understanding, John Jones has been very open about it. November 9th, UFC 309 is what they're targeting for. I asked Dana about it after 302 because I think Jones had put it out there. He's like, knock on wood. I don't know if Jones needs like complete medical clearance or whatever it is. I don't know what those tweets were about. I've tried to dig a little bit. Not really anyone getting back to you as far as that. So I don't know what happened the other night, if he had indulged in something and maybe just getting on the phone, or if he did hurt himself. I don't know. So can't say too much, but literally like a couple minutes before we came on the show, first reported by Damon Martin of MMA Fighting, that he was charged with 2 misdemeanors in Albuquerque stemming from the incident in March where the drug-free sport tester came to his home and he took the phone. There was the whole incident. We saw some camera footage, et cetera, et cetera. You guys might know better than me from my knowledge and kind of following John Jones incidents in New Mexico legally over the year. These don't really seem like they're going to be meaningful charges in any way, 2 misdemeanors in that state in particular. I don't know if his history gets taken into account, things like that. It's kind of hard to say. It's really fresh news, but it doesn't seem like this is going to have an impact on his timeline to return, et cetera, et cetera. So we're kind of in an unknown stage right now. I know they want to do November, but as I kind of just said with Conor McGregor, like November is what, 5 months away, 4 months away, 4.5.
Yeah.
That's a long time to get to a John Jones fight. So anything can happen, but do I believe he wants to fight then? Do I believe Stipe wants to fight then? Do I believe the UFC wants the fight to happen then? Yes. So we'll see.
If an alleged hit and run didn't get him anything serious, he's just going to get a noogie for screaming at this young lady. Crystal Martinez, I think was her name, or something like that. Just trying to do her job. Guess he was taking a nap, celebrating his birthday. I don't know. And he just didn't want to be bothered. But yeah, that's that story from a few months ago coming to light. And as far as the finger, we don't know much, folks. But yeah, the gut feeling for me seems to be like that fight's not going to come together. But I'm really excited about Aspinall and Blades, and maybe that becomes a bigger fight than we think it is because of these doubts we have. But what do you think about this whole Jones thing goes? Like I say, we followed his career for a long time. It kind of gets old. Somebody had an interesting tweet. A post there. With every tweet, it just becomes less meaningful. What he's trying to say. Do you almost feel the same way with this type of news?
Less is more, and we just kind of get over it. And it's so weird because like some of the stuff is just so borderline silly. The finger thing, just the things he says. But like Mike said, it's a long time, right? A very long time. And every day that goes by, that fight seems more and more ridiculous. And once Aspinall fights, and if he goes in there and he mops the floor, does a great performance, it's going to look even dumber and dumber. I'm not seeing it, man. I don't know. It's the whole John Jones thing is starting to get on my nerves a little bit.
In my 2024 bold predictions column in beginning of January, I predicted we get 1 combined fight this year between John Jones and Conor McGregor. I thought maybe that was a little bit under, but if we get 2, it's going to come right under the wire. So we'll see.
I agree. Mark England says just take the title off him already. And I did see some of these numbers. Their level of interest for this weekend was a 1 from Oatmeal 2-6, Lazy Bet a 3.7, Steve Williams a 5. Out
Climbing.
1 foot out the door, 5 out of 10. We're talking about the upcoming Apex card. Ernie B, a 6. So yeah, they're not excited there. UFC needs some big announcements or something. I don't know. I just want to close up, guys. Oh, and by the way, Mateus Gamrot and Dan Hooker have been signed. So that lightweight division's shaken out. We expect Arman Sarukian to do his public service announcement and probably face Islam Makhachev. It'll just be under the 6 months of what the commission was looking for in terms of getting him, to fight in Abu Dhabi. And then I guess if Chandler gets matched up against McGregor, the one thing I am hoping for is a Poirier-Diaz fight. I don't care if it's boxing, in the streets, or in MMA, but I'd love to see those two guys fight. I think they're big stars, and they could make a lot of money and get the fans fucking pumped on a Saturday night. That's where everyone's calling each other saying, "What are you doing for the fight? Come on over." That would be a great fight, Poirier versus Nate. Do you know anything about that, Mike? Does that have any chance of ever happening? I know it seems like a long shot for Diaz to come back, even though he says he wants to come back. And Poirier, it ain't easy for him to just bounce and go box. I think he has to fulfill something from the UFC, unless he's in the good graces of the UFC where he'd be allowed to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard anything right now besides just what Dustin said. He still has like 5 fights left on his contract, so it would have to be a similar situation to Masvidal, where they allow him well under contract to go do boxing matches against a select group of names. But yeah, I don't know. I think if Nate Diaz does business with the UFC again in that regard, it'll be to come back and fight in MMA, and Poirier would be an option. McGregor would be an option. It's kind of all up in the air. Obviously, Diaz just fought, so I imagine there's going to be a little time before he figures out his next move.
One question that came through the chat, it was really early. I saw it and I saved it. Let's talk about it. It's a very interesting question, since basically the show's coming to an end. Beavis and Butthead wants to know, how did you guys get your jobs at MMA Junkie? What got you into MMA? Were you fans before MMA Junkie? Goes, you want to answer that first?
Man, I mean, that is a really, really long question or answer. But the short of it was by accident. I was watching ESPN, and they were actually showing Pancrase. It was Boss Rudin and I think Frank Shamrock or Ken Shamrock. And I thought it was pro wrestling. And I'm like, wait a minute, these guys are actually hitting themselves. And that kind of just rolled into something else. And then when UFC 1 came out in the Gracies, I'm a smaller dude. So to see a small guy kind of take it to all these other fighters, I thought, well, this is amazing. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And from there, all that rolled into the MySpace years of it was so accessible fighters. I would interview them, and then from there that turned into Tag Radio, the show that George and I started doing, and that turned into MMA Junkie Radio, and it just kind of spiraled. But honestly, we never thought, this was never in the cards, covering MMA. It just kind of happened. But luckily, it happened in a sport that we feel like we helped make grow. And it's been a great ride. But if you ever want a longer answer to that, because there's a way longer answer to that, hit me up on social media, and I'll direct you to some episodes where we go a little bit more in depth about that.
Yeah. So Beavis and Butthead, I was in your spot. I used to listen to a show called Sound Off on MMA Weekly with Frank Trigg and Ryan Bennett. The host, Ryan Bennett, passed away. Frank Trigg had kind of become a friend of ours a little bit, just knowing him through the show. And we actually got an opportunity to start a show called Tag Radio with Frank Trigg, which then became MMA Junkie Radio. So I used to be just like you, listening to a show, asking questions, comments, loved it, and that's how this came about. But like Ghost said, it is a long answer, a more detailed answer we could probably give you maybe on another occasion. How about you, Mike Bond?
Yeah, it's also kind of a long story, but the short version is started as just a huge fan of the sport. My first live event was UFC 67, February 2007. That was Anderson Silva and Travis Lutter as the main event. Crow Cop debuted on that card. Frankie Edgar debuted on that card. Rampage debuted on that card. Machida debuted on that card. So that's a crazy one to look back on. And as Dana White always says, at least something that's rung true with me, if you're like a fan on the verge and you haven't seen a live event, when you go, it just takes it to the next level, especially back then where it felt much more special. And once my kind of obsession came over, I started my own little website while I was in university, and would reach out to fighters on Twitter, trying to get any interviews I could, emails, things like that. First MMA related person I interviewed was John Anik. Second was Benson Henderson. And then did kind of my own thing for a year or so on the writing side. And our former editor-in-chief, MMA Junkie founder, Dan Stupp, reached out to me one day and said he was interested in seeing my work and if we could do something together. And essentially the rest is history. On August 1st, a couple of weeks from now, will be my 13-year anniversary with MMA Junkie.
Damn, I didn't know some of that, Mike. That's interesting. I just want to ask you something real quick. Did you interview John Anik when he was with Bellator at the time?
No, so he hadn't made his official broadcast debut yet. He had only done dry runs, and this was right after he had done his first pay-per-view dry run, calling the UFC Hall of Fame fight between Shogun and Dan Henderson at UFC 139, and he was getting ready for his first broadcast, which I believe was a UFC on FX card, if you remember those. Those are for the old schools. So yeah. Been a long time.
Folks might think I'm clowning, but he actually did season 1 of Bellator. I think it was ESPN Deportes or something like that. And now he's obviously a standout guy with the UFC play-by-play guy there. But yeah, no, that was a great question. And what Mike said rings true, because I became an even bigger BKFC fan. I went to BKFC on Friday in Temecula. It is crazy, folks. If you've always just been on the verge of going, go. It really, really, really made me a bigger fan of BKFC. And I want to go to one Power Slap, just to be fair. I'm not the biggest fan, but I learned something.
And you're not missing anything.
Oh, really? Okay.
But I will say for anyone who wants to go to a live UFC event who's never been before, I know tickets are insanely expensive now. Don't buy floor seats. What you want to do if you're in an arena, buy like 5-6 floors or rows off the floor, so you're on the same level as the cage, which is elevated off the ground. That's the best way you'll see it, and that's worth your money.
Oh, nice. Okay. Interesting. All right. Hey, let's just close with this, guys. Look, whether you like him or not, Donald Trump is a former president, right? And he's also running to get reelected. 95% of the MMA community loves the guy, including Dana White. He's a personal friend of his. What happened to him on Saturday is horrific. America is better than that. We're a democracy. We settle our elections by voting, not taking someone's life. And I know a few people wanted to see what we had to say about that. I just want to keep it short and sweet, but I really mean it. That was just a horrific act in the history, especially in the history of our country. And we really, really need to take the temperature down. And I know the president has spoken about this. And I'm not trying to repeat what he said, but it's so true. We kind of get in some ridiculous arguments over this stuff. And you see what it can lead to, man. A firefighter, I believe an ex-firefighter, lost his life protecting his family. And I think there's been some other injuries. This is really, really getting out of control, folks. But we're glad that he survived.
Pseudo said, we are all one.
We are all one. Let's unite. All right. That's it for this week. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to Spinning Back Clique. And, of course, you can watch the show in its entirety by just going to the YouTube channel. In fact, on the way out, hit the like button, subscribe. So if you missed any of it, you can watch the entire show. You can watch previous Spinning Back Cliques. You can watch Mike's interview with Paddy Pimblett when he tells them I'm on the last fight of his contract, and all of the other content that we accumulate every week on this award-winning website. And remember, we'll be back, just like we always come back, every Monday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, for the live version. And, of course, you can be a part of the show. We try to bring as many people as we could in the comment section. For now, we're out of here. Go out and be a champion.